Hey everybody, it's Dave here from Dragonhill Games, and welcome to This Week in MTG Finance. As always, I'd like to kick things off by thanking MTG Stocks for allowing us to use graphical information for the purposes of this video. Well folks, today is the big day. Wizards has decided to move their banned and restricted announcement up early from November 18th to today, October 21st. I strongly considered holding off this video for a day or two so we could see what got the hammer and how that is sort of affecting the market in the first few days. But I think consistency is a little more important for everyone, so you're getting the video on time. And this way we'll have a week to absorb, what happens with the banned and restricted announcement and see its effect on the marketplace. So let's dive right into cards that are moving the market this week. And we'll start with Throne of Eldraine. Sort of at the top of the list, although not up, a crazy amount in value. It is up, over the last week or so, about $10, which is pretty good for a card that's in standard. But Questing Beast is proving to be a real winner from this set. This card is making appearances in all kinds of decks across multiple formats. It's even made it into Legacy, which says something. I mean, to crack into Legacy, a card's got to be pretty special. It's definitely one for us to keep our eyes on. Speaking of cards that have cracked Legacy, Oko Thief of Crowns is like a diesel train that's just not stopping. I mean, this card is appearing everywhere, in all formats, in a bunch of different decks. Considering how much this card is getting played and all the formats that it's getting played in, I think finishing your playset at, around $40 is definitely not a bad plan. However, I wouldn't kind of go beyond that in terms of investment. I mean, this card might hit $60, even $70 or something crazy while it's in standard. Reality is this card is, it's amazing. It's going to be up there with the things like Liliana, Karn, Jace the Mind Sculptor. I put it in sort of those categories. So years from now, when the set hasn't been opened for years and the supply is dried up, this is probably $100 Planeswalker. But there's going to be a really good buying opportunity when it leaves standard. When it rotates out of standard, there's going to be a flood of them from all the standard players that, want to just kind of unload them. So there'll probably be a great buying opportunity for this card then. And that's the point where I would grab up copies for investment purposes. But definitely while it's in standard, if you're planning on playing Oko, or building a deck with Oko in the future, while it's in standard, I think this is a fine price to be paying to fill out your playset for sure. And this is definitely a card to sort of keep our eyes on and watch what it's doing over the course of the next, few months, a year or so. All right, let's move along to some cards I'm recommending as sells this week. I mentioned Knight Exemplar a few weeks back when it was around the $14, $15 mark. And selling at $17 and change is just an awesome opportunity if you're holding this card and you're not, keep your commander copy or whatever and just strongly consider unloading the rest at these prices. This card is solely being driven by Sir Gwyn, one of the new Brawl commanders, but it's turning out to be, a half decent commander, actual commander. But I mean, that's all the deck is, that's all this card is seeing play in, right? So, I mean, Knights just aren't going to be, and at current with the cards that are printed, are just not going to be, super competitive in Modern. It's just missing some of the tools that some of the other tribal decks have, like Merfolk, for example. I mean, Fish have cheaper lords, they're 1 mana cost cheaper. They all get Island Walk. I mean, with Spreading Seas, you force your opponents to have islands if they're not already playing them. So, all your stuff is kind of just unblockable. It gets big really faster. So this deck just doesn't keep pace with decks like Merfolk. And Merfolk is not even top tier. I mean, I played Merfolk quite a bit. I actually have, a decent Merfolk deck put together. And I love playing it, but it's just not top tier Modern play. And Knights don't even measure up as far as I'm concerned to Merfolk. So the reality is this card's just, Knights just aren't going to be a thing in Modern, at least not with the tools that they have now. The recent Throne of Eldraine set gave them a lot of new shiny toys, but it just didn't quite get there. So really this card is just kind of commander. And if we have a look at Sir Gwyn, Sir Gwyn is currently in an all-time low state, and considering the fact that stores everywhere were short-shipped on Brawl, This indicates to me that interest in this deck or its viability in general seems to be waning. I want you to think back a few months to when War of the Spark was first spoiled, and this card here, Feather the Redeemed. So this is a perfect example of kind of what's going on here. Feather was, touted as going to be one of the next most amazing commanders. And don't get me wrong, like the deck is really cool. I've seen it played. It's a cool deck. But there was a bunch of cards that sort of rose out of the ashes, 50-cent dollar cards and became, $10, $20 cards, only later to fall when this deck really just didn't gain any traction. A perfect example of that is Sunforger. I mean, when Feather was spoiled, Sunforger went from being $1 rare to, almost, $9, $10. And that's because, sure, it is amazing in that deck if that's a deck that you're going to build and, play and be competitive and happy with. But, I mean, Feather, like I said, just didn't gain traction. It's not an overly competitive deck. And since that crazy spike, we've dropped more than 50%, of the total value it gained. So when we look at things like Knight Exemplar and by default other cards that are associated with the Sir Gwyn deck, it's prudent to take an approach that this is kind of likely the same path that Sunforger would take. We're going to have a massive spike over the course of a couple of weeks. People are going to try out the deck, have fun with it, and then, it's going to kind of fall back off into obscurity. Speaking of cards associated with Sir Gwyn that have spiked, Heartseeker is definitely at the top of that list. I mean, this card was junk rare status forever. But it does a really cool effect in the deck. I mean, Sir Gwyn has Equip Knight 0. So you avoid paying this crazy 5 equip cost, and then you can just tap a knight, unattach it and destroy target permanent. So you got several knights. I mean, every turn you're just kind of picking off your opponent's board. Great card in the deck for sure. But I mean, like I said, this card rose out of obscurity when Sir Gwyn was, released, and it is fantastic in the deck, but its reality is it's just not going to stay at this point. So again, if these are the opportunities we look for as MTG investors. We want to sell when cards reach these crazy heights. So if you're not building the deck, and even if you are, if you have more than one copy, it's time to unload these if you're able to move them for anywhere near this price. And the last one I have for you guys this week under the sell category is Spellshock from Exodus. Sort of really low supply, even though it's in the uncommon slot. But, these older sets, there just wasn't the same quantities printed as there is today. So there is a very small supply of this card. It was really only ever printed in that set. But we're talking about a crazy spike here from, 25 cents-ish up to close to $5. And the sole reason for that is because it works in, a commander deck with Torbrand Thane of Redfell from the new set Throne of Eldraine. Obviously, an amazing include in that deck. Spellshock, whenever a player successfully casts a spell, Spellshock deals 2 damage to him or her, And then you combine that with Torbrand doing the extra 2, the damage is racking up really quickly. Is the deck competitive? I don't know. That remains to be seen. I think it'd be a really fun deck to build. But regardless, again, this is sort of the opportunities we look for as investors. So if you're holding, a bunch of copies in this in a shoebox somewhere, it's time to dig them out and sell them for, $450 plus if you can get it. All right, let's look at some cards I'm investing in this week. And at the top of that list for me is the Royal Scions from Throne of Eldraine. This card just simply isn't getting enough love. I mean, it's not in a dominant deck in Standard right now because of the situation that we're in, but it's poised to make big jumps. I mean, there's going to be all kinds of new decks come up out of the woodwork once we get the banned and restricted announcement this week. And this card's in the position to, take a prominent stage. I've been testing it out in Arena in my, Ironcrag Pyromancer Improbable Alliance deck, and it's super strong. I would actually play this as a one-of in my modern Jeskai control. And as you can see, it's getting play in all kinds of formats. It's making super strong, appearances in modern, even legacy. So that tells me the demand for the card and the value on the card really is there. So this is a great opportunity to get in, get your playset if you don't have any. Consider some for, investment purposes. losses, because I really do believe that this card is sort of poised to make a nice jump from here. All right, and the next one I have for you guys this week is Remand, specifically the Modern Masters 2015 version. It's a little bit cheaper than the Ravnica version. And as you can see, Remand is, it's heavily played in Modern. It's always going to have a home in Modern. Picking them up at around the $5 mark is never going to be a bad investment. But if you can think back to when we were talking about the possibilities of Splinter Twin being unbanned, this is a 4 of, it's an auto include 4 of in Splinter Twin. So in the event that Splinter Twin does get unbanned, which I actually think is a very distinct possibility in Modern. I mean, Modern is in a healthy place. It's got a lot of answers that, it didn't have for Splinter Twin before. So I think unbanning Splinter Twin is, perfectly fine for Modern. It's not going to damage the format. And so in which case, if that does actually happen, then Remand is going to see a healthy spike for sure. So, picking them up, like I said, around $5 is always going to be a good solid investment. But in the event that Splinter Twin is unbanned, you're going to see some healthy profits from here. All right, and the last one I have for your consideration this week under the investment category is Cryptic Command. So at $26, I mean, this card's just a really good, solid, long-term investment. Some of the same reasons apply. In the event that Splinter Twin gets unbanned, this card's going to be 1 or 2 of in that deck, so there'll definitely be, a little jump there, a little more demand for the card. But it's a healthy, Modern is a healthy format right now, especially. It's played in all kinds of control decks, so jumping in at this price is never ever going to be a bad investment. Well, I really hope you guys enjoyed this week in MTG Finance. As always, if you're a subscriber, I want to thank you for being here. We really appreciate your support. And if you're not, now's a great time to consider subscribing to our channel. We post at least 2 videos every week. Okay, bye for now.